Great. Well, in the meantime, we'll just start with intros and then we'll let Asif come. So the irony is that Asif has a location-based startup. So hopefully we'll be able to find them at some point. But thanks everyone for joining today. So I'm Rachel West. I'm the Director of Business Development at RevTech Ventures. So today we're going to talk about how to turn the future of brick and mortar and just what that looks like and how you're going to drive conversion in the future when people are worried about less foot traffic and things like that. So we have Holly Breidas, Matthew Sear, and Asif Khan is about to join us. So I'm going to let them intro themselves. But Holly is a partner at McKinsey and leads the McKinsey retail customer experience practice. And Matthew has a startup that's actually a part of the RevTech portfolio called Crave Retail. So it drives conversion in dressing rooms and also helps store associates. And then Asif is actually one of our newest investments. And so he uses data to do location-based insights for retailers. So with that, Holly, I'll let you go ahead and intro yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. Holly Breidas. I'm a partner at McKinsey and Company, which is a large global management consulting firm based here in Dallas, proudly. See, we're trickling in some more people as we go. All of my work actually works with retailers, and that's both small startup retailers all the way up to some of the biggest retailers you can think about in the US and on a global basis. And I help them on growth, which a lot of folks would find to be an ironic topic right now. But as we're talking about the future of brick and mortar, I think it's quite a relevant and timely discussion. So looking forward to being here with you all today.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rachel, for the introduction as well, and having me on this panel with Holly and Asif. I'm honored. Yeah, I'm Matthew Sear, CEO and co-founder of Crave. Now almost 2 decades in retail and technology. This is my third startup. Call me crazy, but I kind of live for this. I love waking up every day with a bunch of talented people and solving problems, putting out the occasional fires, and obviously delivering value to retailers. I kind of fell into retail about 15 years ago and spent 10 years in stores helping both Abercrombie and Skechers grow their domestic business. And then I later moved to China, where I helped all of Southeast Asia grow their international operations business. So it was really phenomenal to take the company out of the black into green, really. We opened up several hundred stores, and now they have over thousands of stores. And most recently, about 5 years ago, my wife and I moved to Austin, Texas, where I want to build a retail tech company. She's in retail tech right now. I'm also obviously in retail tech. So we're kind of a retail family. So I'm excited, obviously, to talk about retail today and share my experiences, and hopefully whoever's listening finds some value from it.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, we'll dive on in, and then hopefully Asif will be able to join soon. But, just starting with the obvious, a lot of people are saying that brick and mortar is dead, just given the decline in foot traffic and from, current events. So should retailers invest in this area, Holly? And what's one thing people should be optimistic about in this area?
So I love this question as an opener. I think, first of all, people have been calling for the retail apocalypse for years, right? This is not new. This is not something that's been driven from a COVID pandemic or anything else. I mean, if you look back at the news headlines in 2016, 17, 18, right? It was all about store closures and will retail survive, right? So this is not a new debate, and yet retail is still here. I do think there is a real point about the United States in particular needing to reset on retail, right? If you just look at the facts, and I am a fact geek-based person, right? And you count the number of doors and square footage per capita and compare the United States versus, say, the UK, Germany, France, any other developed market, right? You will see that we are overdoored by somewhere between 5 to 8x those other countries. Right. So I think there is a bit of a retail reckoning, which is needed to happen from a store footprint standpoint, which has nothing to do with COVID. Right. This has been decades in the making. A stat I find fascinating is that malls were built at 4 times the rate of the United States population since 1975. Right. So, there's only so much shopping that people can do. I do think Rachel's right to point out that there are some shifts driven from COVID, which, at least at McKinsey and in the work that I do, we believe will persist. And that is the role that digital has to play going forward. I view that as very connected in with retail, and those as kind of symbiotic sides of the same coin. But the rise in digital is real, right? The amount of online shopping, the number of customers who are kind of avoiding stores, obviously, through this pandemic. But even more importantly, on a go-forward basis, you have 1 in 4 consumers who anticipate that across retail categories, they expect their online shopping percentage to increase, right? So that is a real, phenomenon that I think is here to stay. The optimistic part, right? There's a few things that get me quite excited and bullish on retail going forward. One is just connected to this point on digital is the rise of omnichannel. And that talks about both retail and online working together, right? And so the role of the store actually becomes more important, not less. It just evolves. We've seen a 40% rise in BOPIS since COVID started, with 60% of consumers continuing to plan to use that channel, right? Where they're going to buy it online, but they actually physically want to go pick up the purchase in store. I think a second has been just the amount of customer switching we've seen, somewhere between like 1 in 2 to 1 in 5 consumers, depending on the category, have switched during this period. If you're a retailer or brand, right, that's a phenomenal way to have new customers coming into your business, be it your online or your stores, and converting them through. And then the third thing that gets me pretty bullish, just looking forward, is actually just our generational dynamics. And when you look at Gen Z, which I am not, I will not admit if anybody else I know on this group is or is not, but is quite excited about continuing to shop in stores. And people didn't think that would be the case for a long time because it's the generation that has mostly grown up in a digital age, right? But if you look at their responses and survey them and poll them, they actually get more joy and value out of shopping in person than any other cohort. And by the way, they are already the largest cohort in terms of income in the United States at 20%, right? Which will only grow as more Gen Zers come into the workforce and earn income. So I think there's a lot to be excited about for retail looking forward.
Yeah, awesome. And Matthew, I know you actually saw a lot of trends in Asia as well. Sounds like Asia is pretty much close to recovered now. So I was wondering, what's your perspective on how brick and mortar is going to reinvent itself here? Classic shipping centers and it's going. If you want to move it on. Steve likes to make an entrance, so now we all know he's here.
Wow.
So glad you could make it. So we just did intros. So when I ask you your next question, we can integrate your intro there. So everyone, welcome to Steve. But Matthew was just talking about how brick and mortar is going to reinvent itself. And in his perspective, just, a lot of times we hear, oh, they're all turning into shipping centers or product discovery platforms. But, really interested in your perspective, Matthew, on what you really think the future will be. And maybe thoughts that other people aren't thinking right now as well.
Well, I hope this underwhelming statement is taken to heart from a lot of retailers. I don't know if we need to totally reinvent ourselves as the industry is thinking about the future. Everything that a retailer is doing right now needs to revolve around the customer. If you don't have a customer first strategy, you're going to fall short, whether there's a pandemic or not. And so when I think about reinventing ourselves, I think about HEB particularly. They've done an incredible job at putting the customer first. They've got a beautiful app, for example, Holly was talking about omnichannel. Right, on this application, I can see everything that I've purchased in a store. I can see promotions on things that I bought. I can have something delivered to my doorstep. I can drive to a store and somebody puts it into my car without me asking any questions. I can go in a store and it will tell me exactly which aisle to go to. I can ask a sales associate. They're having the exact same app, so we can jive out like, cool, you get the same app as I do. They got customer service everywhere. That to me is this number one goal that every retailer needs to focus on. That shows the customer that you value their time and their convenience above all things. I think smaller formats is also obviously going to be a trend, but it's a trend towards the value of the consumer, right? Kendra Scott took 100 stores in late March and flipped them all around into fulfillment centers like you talked about. But it was about her shoppers who are online who say, okay, I still want these products, but I want them tomorrow. How does she take her brand and do something? She repurposes her store instantly. Long are the days of these 20,000 square foot stores where it's impossible to find this cute red top you found online. We think about online as this two-step, two-click step to get to a transaction, but you walk into a store and you presented this big box. That's not the right path. That's not thinking about the customer first. How do you help her walk into the store and have 2 steps to the products that she loves? How do you help her find the things that are personalized to her instantly that's latest and trending? How do you help her take another 2 steps and try on the things? That's why she went there in the first place. She wanted to see it, she wanted to try it, and then she wants to buy it, whether the product's available in the store or not. So reinvent yourself means focus on the customer. If you're not thinking about the customer, stop everything else you're doing. And if you do that with connected experiences focused on convenience, I think then go wild, go invest in whatever you want in the future. Focus on the customer first, like what H-E-B, Kendra Scott, Home Depot, Lululemon, Abercrombie's finally turning around. These are brands that are focusing on the customer and it's paying dividends to their shareholders and to their margins and top line revenue.
Oh, awesome. So I don't feel like that was an underwhelming response, but I think that was great. So Asif, so for those who don't know Asif, so Asif was actually CEO and founder of the Location-Based Marketing Association for 10 years. And then using that, he actually started his own company called Ground Level Insights, which we literally just funded last week, which uses different sources of data to help retailers understand where their consumers are going before and after. There's a lot of other neat things that can do as well. So he's served as an advisor for the United Nations, NASA, a lot of regulatory bodies as well. So excited for his perspective, and Asif, I'll let you add a little bit more color. But also, really wanted to get your perspective on what you think is actually driving people to stores right now. And how you understand customer behavior right now and the details of what you're seeing.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, apologies for having trouble getting in here. So the lesson learned is use Google Chrome and not Firefox. It's just, yeah. Anyways, the video and audio permissions were the problem. I could see you guys, but I couldn't weigh in. So anyhow, glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, so we're a company, Ground Level Insights. We call ourselves a movement science company. So we basically analyze billions and billions of pieces of location or geospatial data to understand the movements of the population. So we see everywhere people go. We're literally the big brother that everybody fears. We're tracking people's mobile devices, all in an anonymous way, but we're able to look at that at an aggregated level and derive insights on what's going on in the physical world. And so when we look retail right now, sort of in COVID and coming out of COVID, of course, what we're generally seeing, I would say, is still, as we're starting to recover, less than 40% of the pre-COVID traffic is back, to where they were in terms of visiting stores with the same level of frequency and engagement that we saw pre-COVID. The other thing that we're noticing is that we're also able to look at with our data what we call dwell time, how long people are staying in the stores. And for us, that's simply based on looking at the mobile device IDs and how long those IDs remain resident in a physical location. And so in general, one thing that's really interesting is that we're seeing longer dwell times than previously. So I'm going to say that, anecdotally, when we look at the data, we're able to say, pre-COVID, people would go to a lot of different stores, a lot of restaurants, a lot of different places, in and out, get whatever they need on their way home, that type of thing. And now what we're seeing is a lot more planned trips, less frequency of trips, but much more purpose and intent to them. And obviously, because they know exactly what they're going for and they've got their, often that can take a little bit longer. And it's further complicated by social distancing rules inside of grocery or whatever the case might be in checkout lines and those kinds of things. So so that's sort of at a super high level. And then the other thing, that I think is kind of interesting is certain sectors, because we can see the, all parts of the industry, certain sectors we're seeing, different traffic levels than others, right? Obviously, certain businesses were deemed essential during COVID. Ones like grocery, for example, we all need to eat still. The home improvement sectors, Lowe's, Home Depot, brands like that. A lot of renovation work going on during COVID on homes and that type of thing. And of course, other sectors like cannabis in many sectors were deemed essential businesses. And so the traffic didn't slow down. In fact, it picked up in some cases in terms of the numbers of people we saw moving around.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting. So then just as a follow-up as well, traditionally retail has always been about face-to-face. So how do you think technology is going to support the need to really connect with shoppers meaningfully now that you can do a lot of things not face-to-face?
Yeah, I think there's, we're seeing technology manifest ways. In a lot of ways, COVID is driving innovation in retail, right? We're seeing mass adoptions of mobile payments that weren't there before. We're seeing lots of, pickup and delivery services that brands weren't necessarily using before. But one thing that I can speak to, from my past experience as the head of the Location-Based Marketing Association and now at ground level, is something that a term that we coined, or I coined, I guess, some time ago, called physical retargeting. And so you're familiar with normal online ad retargeting where, people, are surfing on the web, looking, shopping for new cars, hitting car websites or whatever the category might be. And then they jump onto Facebook to see what's going on with friends and family. And miraculously, there's an ad for a car. That's normal ad retargeting. But what we're able to do now, and what we're seeing brands start to embrace, especially coming out of COVID, is this idea of looking at the movements of people in the physical world and then storing that data. So, if people actually went to a car dealership, let's say, and we're able to detect that and have, information around that. And then when they're back online at home and they're in Facebook, now instead of it being any car ad that they get hit with based on their browser activity, now maybe you hit them with a car ad from the actual dealership that they physically visited. So blending the online and the offline world in what we call physical retargeting, I think is something that's going to become especially interesting right now in a post-COVID time.
So then, Matthew, I feel like you're almost a step before that in the process. So once people go into the store and they try on clothes, where do you see fitting rooms fit into that whole landscape? You're muted. We can't hear you. Sign language?
There we go. Yeah.
No? Okay. He's back.
Yeah. So
but it sounds like you're underwater.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. There you go.
Yeah, no. And the most unbiased answer ever, I think obviously fitting rooms play an incredible role in the future of retail. No, I mean, here's the reality. A purchase is never complete until you've tried on an item. And even if you bought something online, it's not until you take it home and you put it on and you try it to determine, yes, I'm going to keep it or not. And if you have to return it, the retailer is obviously losing a ton of margin there, and it's a bad experience for the customer. In a store, there's no excuse. You have optimized this funnel all the way to her getting into a fitting room. She tried something on. You want to make that moment extremely important for her and extremely special for her. But through this pandemic, talking about face-to-face, prior to this pandemic, I think it was like 67, 68% of shoppers who were browsing a rack and couldn't find the size that they wanted would not actually turn to a sales associate and say, hey, do you have this? Even though 8 out of 10 times you would have this product. Okay, and if you're in a fitting room and you're changing and you realize some of the things that don't fit, what's the odds of you saying to the sales associate, hey, by the way, I need a size 36 because my stomach no longer fits in the size 34. Like, you're not going to have those types of face-to-face engagements, and they're very uncomfortable moments. You layer on a pandemic where you're not supposed to be that close to people. If you don't put technology at the center between how shoppers can request things on demand, how associates can engage with customers, and give them the ability to get help when they need it, then you're going to be missing out on a very critical part of that customer experience. We've estimated that the top 10 retailers by store count lose nearly $2 billion every single year due to fitting room abandonment. And the top reason due to fitting room abandonment is because there's a lack of availability, a lack of prompt help from sales staff. And a lot of that stems from people not feeling comfortable asking for help when they need help. So if you're a retailer and you have a fitting room and you're not figuring out how to embed technology into that, you not only don't know about this problem, but you don't have a way to actually prevent the problem. So, obviously we're excited about helping stores rethink how fitting rooms be built, but putting technology in there, not purely for the customer's sake, but actually giving the sales managers of these stores information about an extremely high converting space so they can train their store staff on ways to optimize the experience in ways they haven't been able to do before.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with all of these different new recommendations on where retail should go and also where some aspects of where retail is going to stay, how does this reshape those metrics that they're using to track their success? What do they look like? How do they actually transform from going from where they are today to future state? And what does that evolution look like in terms of how they're doing it when they've been operating the same way for the past 100 years? Asif, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I do. So I mean, for me, I think it comes back to, what retail was in my childhood. So, born in the 70s, I'm a kid of the, grew up in the 80s, really. For me, I remember, after school, hanging out at the mall with my friends and, those kinds of things. But one of the things that drove me there there was a video arcade, and we would go there and we would hang out, we played games, and then when we were done, then we would spend time in the food court and in the stores, and whatever money we had, disposable income we had as teens, that's where it went at the mall. And the thing is that I find that today retail has really become a place that you just go to buy whatever, and it's all about price. And if it's just about price, you can do that on Amazon. But we need to get back to this idea of creating experiences, and I think augmented reality, virtual reality, these types of technologies are really going to bring a lot of that, to bear. And I think there's an opportunity for brands to embrace those, to create events, to create reasons for people to come back to the physical space, even though you might be participating in something virtually or physically. I mean, you can't go get your photo taken with Santa Claus on Amazon, right? As you can at the Macy's store or whatever, right? So I think those kinds of things are what really are, we need to find ways to create experiential retail.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anyone have anything to add?
Yeah, I would build. I mean, I agree with Asif on the need to, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
For a second, I thought we weren't going to be able to, but we're good now.
I agree with Steve totally on the need to create experiences, and that's something differentiated that stores can do, right? That is really challenging online. I also think if you just go back to how stores used to think about metrics and tracking success, right? If it was like a new store opening, your finance person would run a discounted cash flow model and look at the internal rate of return, and they would say, okay, do you clear this hurdle rate or do you not? Like, if yes, check, let's open the store. If not, no, right? And that still happens in like most retailers today, which is kind of crazy just when you think about the fact that, in any given retail vertical, 25 to 60% of the sales are coming from online, right? And so I think what I've seen with a lot of my clients and with retailers more broadly, the ones who are smart are starting to move away from this like four-wall, outdated EBITDA view and start to find creative ways to say, hey, the value of the store is a lot more than the four walls that surround it, right? Matthew mentioned Kendra Scott earlier. They participated in a McKinsey experiment we did at the Mall of America called the Modern Retail Collective. And we stood up a store for experimentation and helped some of these retailers actually look about how other metrics, not just the store, right, but dwell time, like was already mentioned previously, virtual try-on, magic, all that kind of stuff, but also how their e-com traffic grew, how their conversion rates grew just within the Minneapolis DMA. And all of these retail brands and retailers saw massive hikes in their online metrics, right, that were driven only from the store because it was just a store experience that was stood up in one location, right? And because it was only in one location, you could really cleanly say, what's driving it. So I think that there are a lot of varying degrees of sophistication in retailers on this today, all the way from the first model I described, which is still quite prominent, right, up to much more sophisticated retailers who are actually, giving credit to the store for a halo effect of driving online sales, right, or are getting much more creative. Some of the things Matthew was saying on collecting, fitting room data, right, to improve your fit or to learn if there's a style that's persistently underperforming because the sizing's a little bit off, right? Like stores can be a wonderful place to not just build experiences, but I think also collect data. It's just they're not being used in that way consistently enough today.
Yep.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. And what were some, I know you also mentioned the Modern Retail Collective and you touched on it briefly, but what were some of the new technologies that you implemented there?
We partnered with a bunch of different companies, and I won't name them right now because I'll forget a few and not do everyone appropriate service. But there were 4 different brands that came together within one space, right? So it was a little bit of a shop and shop model to start with, right? Which a lot of retailers have been experimenting with. Kendra Scott was one. There was a lingerie brand, which was another, right? So they were non-competitive retailers that were in this 4-wall experience together. It got a lot of press, right? So it got a lot of traffic and people coming in to check it out. But in the Kendra Scott case, there was virtual mirrors, excuse me. So you could stand in front of it. For those who don't know Kendra Scott, they're a jewelry brand based in Austin. And they, you could actually say, hey, I want to see what this earring in this stone type looks like on me. And it would simulate what it was. And we would measure the dwell time and how much time, a customer stood in front of the mirror and if that equated to whether or not they actually made a purchase, right? So it was things like that. We also looked at cyber currency, crypto payments, so experimenting with a lot of different payment technologies to see, if that would provide for a better customer experience. So it was a 3-month pilot that was basically stood up to help retailers do a lot of experimentation that they can't necessarily do on their own.
Yeah. That makes sense. Interesting. So then, with that, what technologies is everyone most excited about? What should retailers be looking at right now? And Matthew and Asif, you can't say your own company. I know you're tempted, but.
Well, I'll follow suit on my same theme, back to basics. So right now, brand loyalty is decreasing. There's going to be an astronomical amount of returns after this pandemic and shoppers returning to stores for the wrong reason, but they're going back. And they're going to go back with an elevated expectation of what that experience should be like. And there's going to be fewer staff because operations is still not prepared with a lack of staff, or now they're all doing ship from store tasks. Some retailers are hiding merchandise because of this pandemic. The problem that I see here is that these stores are still operating in the dark. They don't know what's happening in the middle of the store. So for me, the most exciting technology is for retailers to finally unlock their hidden superpowers, that they actually possess. And it takes them actually finding out where are people navigating through the store, like companies like Pather. How many people are coming through our doors? Asif's technology, companies like Door. How are our associates performing? Companies like Arcadia, where they're promoting store employee performance. What's the merchandise people are trying on, like my product? What are people doing in the store? If you actually can shine light on this with technologies like the ones that I just listed that actually give retailers the data that's happening across customer activity, and you build connected experiences that actually allow customers to transact in a more unified digital way, now you actually can grow, right? This is future proofing your store, because you can't actually build something that's supposed to be super exciting and super important if you don't even know the middle of your store today. Most retailers today could tell you how many people walked through this door and how many people transacted. They couldn't tell you anything else in the middle of the store. They might have some ideas, and don't get me wrong, there's some great companies that are trying, but for a lot of these retailers, they haven't really penetrated new technology across a large assortment of stores, and therefore they're missing a lot of critical customer data. And that's what they should use, right? Collect that customer data and then build a solution that serves up an experience that is actually important to them, not some holographic ketchup bottle that you think is going to drive some fantasy metric that basket size. Actually build a way for your shoppers to get super excited, not to increase basket size, but to get them to come back every single week. And so they come back and they tell their friends that this is the store that actually creates these really cool, compelling experiences. But we can't create cool, compelling experiences until we understand the middle of our stores a whole lot better. So I want to see more technology in stores that are understanding customer data, customer activity, customer interest, associate performance. If we can optimize those experiences with data, then everything else after that will be really exciting, but it's not necessary until we understand the middle of the store better.
Yeah, that's a good point. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Sure, I'll go. So I'm supposed to say crave, right? Is that the? No, I do think it's super cool what Matthew and the team are doing at Crave, and but I'll say this, and I'll just kind of pick up on what you were saying, Matthew, about data. But I'll take a different spin on it. I think there are definitely retailers and brands need to be thinking about how they use data to create better experiences. No question about it. I think that is front and center. That's the front burner right now. But I think the other thing that they need to be thinking about is how they understand what's going on in their stores, understand who their customers are, where they come from, where they're going, a whole bunch of other things. And then think about how they actually monetize the data. So actually, potentially for some retailers and brands out there, there's a whole new product for them to sell, a whole new revenue opportunity, which is their data. And so look, for example, CVS just launched their own media network that they're out pitching to agencies right now. Walmart has a media network, and so on, because they recognize their data about who their customers are and the trends that those customers follow and what products those customers buy and all of that kind of stuff that they have knowledge about is valuable to advertisers and brands. And I think there's a big opportunity to unlock data. Years and years ago, I remember working with Coca-Cola a little bit, and they caught on to this idea really early on because they realized that they've got their product in every restaurant and every retail grocery store and vending machines and thousands of locations on the planet. And they were able to realize, okay, wait a second, we know where people are going. We know where lots of people are going, and let's figure out how we start to sell that data to other data companies to enrich other data sets. And so I think there's an opportunity to monetize data as an actual revenue stream that these folks should be looking at.
Yeah, that makes sense. Holly, anything to add?
No, I think these guys covered it.
Okay, awesome. So last question, and then we'll go to Q&A. But if you could pick one thing, what do you think the retail industry needs to do to transform and thrive in the future? And this is to everyone.
I'll start.
Awesome.
Willingness to change, and willingness to change quickly. It's been my theme over the last 3 weeks in a lot of conversation, a lot of executives. One luxury brand retailer in New York just 2 days ago said, our retail IT teams are used to doing 2 to 3 projects every year, and now they're pumping out new projects every 2 to 3 every week. It's obviously this need for speed is creating a lot of stress and discomfort because no one likes change while it's happening. But these are the retailers who are actually winning, and they're gaining new customers because they're out there testing, they're out there trying. You know, my mother texted me last week and said, I ordered food online through my mobile phone, and this company called Grubhub is going to deliver it to me. Okay. And she's like, and it was so easy to use. This is a woman, you know, 66 years old, who 8 months ago doesn't even know how to open up most applications, let alone do that. People are getting comfortable with using technology. Don't fear change these days. Go try new things. Go see what your customers like. Embrace the obstacles the way mentality, right? Your customers are changing overnight. You need to go figure out how to change overnight. There is no other option.
That makes sense. Yeah, I taught my mom how to use an online grocery shopping tool for 45 minutes a few weeks ago. So Matthew, I can relate. Awesome. Asif or Holly, who's next?
I'll let Holly go.
Happy to go. No, I mean, I completely agree with Matthew, and you know, I would call that agile, right? In terms of reframing, you know, the ways that retailers are starting to work, cross-functional, very empowered teams, right? That are accountable for driving quick pace and progress, right? It's amazing to see the retailers that are working that way, and it's still the vast minority. The one I would say is, and I introduced myself as a data geek at the onset of this, I can't help it, but being maniacal about what drives value. And I do think that's different for different brands and retailers. I don't think there's a, you know, one size fits all response to that. But I do feel like the retail industry has gotten quite caught up in kind of gimmicky type things and feeling like, you know, they don't have their fundamentals in place. They don't have, you know, the customer experience right. They don't have the basics of omni-channel right. And so they leapfrog in their minds to having, you know, magic mirrors and everything else in the store that add exactly zero value for them, right? Set up the infrastructure, data, customer experience around it. Been a lot of value destroyed in retail at the expense of some bites. And I think retail needs to get a lot more sophisticated on when and how they decide to think about deploying new technologies and being smart on what that's actually driving for their brand and their customer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm always a fan of cutting out the fluff. So, Asif, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what both of these guys said, especially, you know, Holly's comments about the importance of data. Obviously, I'm a data guy, right? You know, we're a data company, and you know, I think it's about data informed innovation, right? I don't think you can just jump in at the latest technologies. I think you need to understand, is that technology going to move the needle for my business? And I do think there are things that are extremely important in the now. And then there's kind of like looking to sort of the medium to longer term, you know, and data can inform that. And I think AI plays a big role in that too, going forward. Like, you know, our whole platform sits on an AI engine. So, you know, we're basically not just taking data and deriving insights, we're actually making predictive recommendations to businesses based on the data that we see, suggestions on actionable ways to move their bottom line. And so I think that will be a big part of retail going forward. But when I talk about the now, I mean, it's like, hey, like people are, you know, you need to get people to come back. And so first and foremost, that's about safety and, you know, restoring consumer confidence and all of these kinds of things that, you know, people want to know that you've got, you know, like we're working with some properties, you know, who are investing heavily in, you know, purifying their air quality and, you know, making sure that the social distancing is set up, you know, really, really well. And, you know, for example, at ground level, we have technology to make sure that face masks are worn or not, and monitoring that using video analytics and things like that. And so, but what we're finding is it's not about the technology, it's the PR story to the public that, hey, we're a business that's investing in making this place safe for you to come back. And that's the now. And then the go forward is about, you know, how you use data to kind of, you know, inform where those investments should be made. So I think that's what's really important. But yeah. For a lot of them, it's survival.
Oh, for sure. And also, I need to clarify, I was not comparing my mom to a 66-year-old woman, I got a text from my mom. So thanks, Mom. And she's my biggest supporter, and she is very tech savvy. So I do need to clarify.
There we go.
So with that, we have time for one more question. So let's do a speed round. So each of you have 60 seconds to answer, and then I'll cut you off. But as a person looking to start a business with a storefront and online presence, what advice could you provide on how to make your business competitive with big box brands and stores? LS says customer focus is key to stand out, but do you have any other suggestions? So 60 seconds, we'll go Holly, Matthew, Asif, go.
LS, you got the first question on the board, and now you get to have us all round robin it. I love the question. And I do think there are things that big box retailers can do that you can't. I mean, Asif's point around the monetization of data and media network stand-ups, right? Like, that takes a ton of organization and infrastructure. There's about 5 retailers in the world that can do that compellingly. But I think on what you could do from standing something up, so I think there's 2 shortcomings that they have. One is that they're not very smart on marketing, right? And I mean, truly data-backed marketing to know that if I drive this keyword or this placement, I'm measuring that, I know what I'm getting from it, right? Like, smaller companies are so much more nimble in the ability to do that than larger retailers. And I think the second one I'd say is that smarter data. You're not going to have as much as them, right? They are sitting on heaps of it. The reality, though, is that most of them haven't organized it to make, sense of head to toe. And so the fact that they have it is not a competitive differentiator for them. But what you can do, right, both through your storefront and online, I think is actually harness data in a way that drives insight, right, for your customer and allows you a better advantage.
That's awesome. And real quick, I'm going to interject. So we had another follow-up question that I think ties nicely. So Matthew and Asif, if you want to put this through the lens of how small businesses can apply what Holly just said in an economical way. So as you know, both of you guys work with enterprises, but Asif, I think you work with small businesses as well. What are economical ways they can implement the types of technology Holly just brought up?
Matthew, you're muted.
Matthew?
Maybe.
Come on. We're almost done.
I was saying go for it, Asif.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think for me, the biggest lesson forget about my company and technology. I mean, I'll speak to my own experience in COVID right now, which is I've discovered so many small local businesses in my community I knew nothing about before COVID because of all these shop local programs, these community-based supports that are out there, from municipal governments and whatnot, just, encouraging people to support local businesses. And so I think there's an opportunity for the SMB market to really jump on that and really embrace social platforms like Nextdoor and these kinds of things that, are really great ways to entrench yourself in the community and use word of mouth and really grow through those social platforms. But the one thing I will say, whether you're small or you're big, is, we've worked with some of the world's biggest retailers and the one thing that drives me crazy as a location guy is companies out there who have like millions and millions of followers on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and whatever. And then I walk in and I say, that's great that you've got 5 million people that are your friends on Facebook. How many of them, do you know where they are right now? Like actually right now. Like, so are you able to connect the dots between your followers and your physical locations where people can actually buy your stuff? Because it doesn't make any sense if you have all these people following you and you're not actually turning them into revenue. Right? You need to actually make the connections. And so the link between social and location becomes really important from big companies to the littlest of little. And I think at the littlest companies, it's all about community, word of mouth, these truly local platforms. I love Nextdoor. I think it's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well,
a little note in getting started, just to add something on top of that, is go figure out who your customers are. It's like just 101 on starting a company. If you don't know who your customers are, then you're going to spend a lot of money wasting time building things for people who aren't your true customers. Identify who they are and try to go sell them something. start small. You have technology at your disposal. Use Facebook, use community groups. Go find who you believe is your #1 customer and go sell them something. If you can't sell them something, then either go find a new who or do something small. But there's a lot of easy ways to go test your market through Facebook, through Instagram. Now you've got TikTok. I mean, find whatever means possible and with the technology available to you to go identify who it is, and then tack on everything that Asif and Holly said, which is use your data to your advantage to continue to market to them in the most efficient ways possible.
I think of the 4 of us, the only Rachel can create her own TikTok dance, right?
Me? Oh, actually, we had an intern that got 3 million views on TikTok. She was our social media intern. Kayla, if you're out there, thank you. So we had actually for Cooklist, one of our other portfolio companies, I think she decreased our cost of customer acquisition by like 50% through TikTok videos. It's nuts. So don't underestimate the power of TikTok is all I'm saying. So yeah, well, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Feel free to DM us all on Facebook, on LinkedIn, if you have any questions. And yeah, thanks for joining, and thanks Matthew, Holly, and Asif for joining as well. And it was great to see you all, and hopefully one day we'll all be back together in person. So
love it.
Thanks guys.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye. Thanks.